What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Today we're going to talk about long-term athlete development. Let's get it popping. So, why is it important to focus on long-term athlete development? It has a lot to do with how our society views sports in today's age. First of all, here, most of our highest knowledgeable coaches work at the elite level. So, as we go down in levels there to younger and younger athletes, in general, coaches are typically not as well educated there. And because they're not as well educated, and oftentimes because teams have trouble finding coaches, parents oftentimes are the coaches. And a lot of parents are not educated about long term athlete development there. And it's important that we focus on long term athlete development because if we just mainly focus on competition, especially at the younger age levels there, it interferes with our athletes' development. That's what we don't want to see. We want to focus on the long term, gradually progressing our athletes to the point to maximize their health and abilities there. So we need to have a long term athlete development approach for this. In addition, a lot of times there's ineffective talent identification systems. Here's a good example of that. A lot of times when in middle school programs, there might be cuts to a basketball team. Unfortunately, during middle school, this is when a lot of people are going through puberty there. Okay? And so someone who's short 1 year, the next year they might shoot up in height. But if they have a bad experience there, and coaches just write them off by cutting them before they've hit that growth spurt, they might later on miss out on a great opportunity because with that athlete growing 6 inches in a year, all of a sudden they're one of the tallest people on the basketball team, and the basketball coach might regret their not having developed that premature athlete there, since that athlete was a late bloomer there. In addition, here, sports have athletes specialize way too early in order to attract and retain participants. Again, that kind of goes along with the cutting example I talked about previously there. So it's important we have the long-term athlete development model in mind when we are coaching our athletes, especially at younger ages. Here's an example of this from Kobe Bryant, arguably one of the best basketball players of all time. And AAU basketball has become more and more popular. Okay? Teams traveling every weekend, going to these tournaments and whatnot. And unfortunately, Kobe Bryant, being one of the best ever there, he's seen it at these younger age levels there about how AAU basketball has sometimes limited the development of these basketball players. A lot of times, what happens when people are on these AAU teams, there's a lot of games, but not necessarily as much practice. And even during practice, they're not focusing on the right things. So what Kobe Bryant has noticed is that a lot of basketball players growing up in this AAU environment without good coaches, what happens is that they can do a bunch of fancy individual work, but they don't understand the nuances of the game. They're missing some of the fundamental works there. And because of that, their development has been stunted. So there is an issue with coaches, especially at the younger levels, not focusing on long-term athlete development. So therefore, it's important that we focus on this and we keep this in mind when we coach our athletes. So when we are focusing on this long-term athlete development model, we need to be considerate of what training things we're trying to emphasize at different points in our children's and adolescents' development cycle there. Okay? And here are 6 different considerations we need to take into account. One of them is going to be age, and we'll talk about age a little bit more in the next slide. Number 2 is going to be the sensitive periods. Okay? And what sensitive periods are is that they are different parts in a human's life there. When the organs and systems there in your human body there are going a lot of intensive development. One example of this might be going through puberty there. When puberty is happening there, a lot of different things from the muscles to the bones to different organs in your body are going through different changes and developments there. And why this is important there is different types of training are going to be more effective at different points in a child's maturation cycle there. Okay? So we want to typically focus more on certain things uh, before puberty and focus on certain things after puberty, depending on when those specific athletic qualities will be most enhanced. Number third consideration we need to look at are the demands of a sports discipline. So, for example, what are the demands of a soccer player? They might differ than the physical demands of a golfer. And a golfer's physical demands might differ compared to a swimmer. So, depending on what the sport requires, okay, might change which things, which physical characteristics we want to focus on enhancing in our long-term athlete development plan. Number four there, another consideration is the optimization of the level of physical fitness. Okay. And it kind of goes along the concept of not too much or not too little. Meaning, for example, if I'm a football player, is strength important? Absolutely. We need to get football players stronger. However, it's not the only thing that football players need to focus on. Okay. Football players need to be fast. Okay. They need to be explosive. Need to be in good shape. They need to be able to do a lot of different skills, such as catching balls, okay, maybe blocking, things along those lines. So we want to focus on different areas of a football player's development depending on what they need more of, but we can't just focus on one thing completely. Another example is boxing. Okay, boxing you could look at is for physical fitness purpose there. Okay, speed and strength probably makes up about 45% of a boxer's training. So we should choose training programs and training drills that will enhance speed and strength about 45% of our total training time. 35% maybe is focused on agility and 20% on endurance. Number five consideration is going to be the structure of a workout. What comes first? Do we focus on strength first, followed by speed? Or do we focus on speed in a workout program? Later on in the exact workout there, maybe focus on strength. So the order does matter there, depending on what we want to enhance. The sixth consideration is sex. Due to girls maturing earlier in their age compared to boys, we might want to focus on certain characteristics that we want to develop, strength, speed, agility, things along those lines, earlier with girls than with boys. So here's the age consideration. Okay. So we've got two different columns here. We've got muscular fitness and we got energy fitness. We got different methods to enhance muscular fitness and time as well. Okay, different methods for energy fitness and time as well. And then in the leftmost column here, we've got different age brackets there. So how to read this chart here? Let's read it in terms of going up to down. So at ages 6 to 10, people that are 6 to 10 years old should focus mainly on body weight and flexibility exercises to enhance muscular fitness. They should be done 15 minutes per day, 3 days per week. Ages 11 to 14, we can focus more on strength endurance while continuing to emphasize flexibility. Strength endurance would be how many reps we could do. So doing more and more reps of something, that would be an example of increasing strength endurance. These should be emphasized 30 minutes per day, 3 days per week. And then ages 15 to 19, when girls and boys there are hitting more of their physical maturity, okay, they're going to can focus more on strength and power, as well as continuing to enhance flexibility. And a general recommendation would be focusing on these activities 45 minutes per day, 3 times per week. As for energy, okay, ages 6 to 10, main emphasis should be on playing games. Playing games will help get these girls and boys there in shape. Okay, and typically roughly 4 hours per week to enhance the ability to create energy. Should be done 4 hours per week total. As they become older, notice the amount of time spent can increase there. Okay. Age 11 to 14, focus on team games, as well as introducing long and easy intervals. Okay. Versus 15 to 19, okay, focusing more moderate and short intervals that are very high intense in nature, as well as enhancing our aerobic or anaerobic capabilities. Anaerobic meaning activities that don't require a lot of oxygen use. Okay, and the amount of total time spent on this, 6 to 8 hours per week. So let's first focus on the trainability of stamina. What is stamina there? Oftentimes we look at stamina in terms of VO2. VO2 meaning the volume of oxygen your body is able to use at any one time there. And so one way we can measure amount of stamina would be watching your VO2 max. And in boys, VO2 max significantly increases between the ages of 14 and 16. As for girls, again, because they mature a little bit earlier, it significantly increases between the ages of 12 and 15. Okay? So if we're trying to focus on increasing stamina, and likewise, in terms of increasing VO2 max there, okay, we should create aerobic training programs to help enhance this there. Now, the aerobic training programs we choose should be individualized based on several different things, one of them being the sport that the participants are participating in. So, for example, aerobic training is important in soccer, but the aerobic training done in soccer is probably going to be different than the aerobic training done with cyclists. With soccer players need to be aerobically trained, but they need to be able to be aerobically trained to be able to perform a lot of repeated sprints. Meaning I perform a sprint, okay, and then I use my aerobic base there to help my body recover in between those sprints that I make in a soccer match. Versus a cyclist there, they've got to maintain a certain pace there for a long period of time. They oftentimes are not increasing the intensity level and then decreasing, decreasing several times throughout the bike ride there. They're oftentimes maintaining a particular amount of speed versus soccer. They're doing some sprints, then they might be jogging, then sprints, then jogging, okay, over the course of a soccer match. So aerobic training should be individualized depending on the sport, for example. Times where we want to really focus on training stamina are typically in boys between the ages of 12 and 16, for girls between the ages of 11 and 15. When should we really focus on increasing strength, and especially strength in terms of using weights there? Boys, typically ages of 15 and 16 is when we can really maximize strength development. Now, again, can we focus on strength earlier on, before the age of 15 in boys? Absolutely, and we definitely should. Okay? But we're probably going to choose weights that are relatively lighter and perform many more reps, okay? Versus trainability of strength at between the ages of 15 and 16. We can probably get away with training fewer reps at relatively higher weights. Again, with girls there maturing more early, their ages where they can really focus on strength training are the ages of 13 and 14. But no matter what, whenever you're focusing on strength training, we need to use correct weightlifting techniques. Technique is of the utmost importance because we want to minimize the risk of injury when we are having our athletes strength train. Trainability of speed. With boys and girls there are actually two different zones that we want to focus on. For boys, 7 to 9 and 13 to 16 years of age. For girls, 6 to 8 and 11 to 13. Now, this first window in boys and girls, this trainability of speed should be focused on training the central nervous system, or the CNS. And typically, we want to choose activities that require a lot of effort, so sprinting very fast for very short periods of time, oftentimes less than 5 seconds. Versus the second window of trainability of speed is centered around energy system development, typically looking at sprints lasting between 5 to 20 seconds. So again, we can train speed outside of these age ranges there, but all we're saying is that you're going to see the biggest bang for your buck in improving speed in these age ranges. Trainability of a skill. Okay. Good example, this might be the skill of throwing a baseball. The ages where we can really focus on it and really get a lot of development and improvements in training of a skill for boys between the ages of 9 to 11, and girls 8 to 11. Okay. Now, when we're training skills there, okay, if we're looking at earlier ages there, okay, we want to choose movements that are more fundamental in nature there. Okay, so starting at the age of 6 there, we can introduce these fundamental movements through using games there. Okay? And here are some of the different fundamental movements that we look at. Okay? Number one is we can look at the ABCs, including the S there, of athleticism. So typically we consider someone more athletic if they're agile, if they're balanced, if they're very well coordinated, and if they're very fast. So we want to create games and have, starting at the age of 6, have our athletes participate in these games there, whether it be small-sided games at practice, okay, or maybe a little bit more towards actual games there. But we want to focus on creating activities that are going to improve agility, balance, coordination, and speed in these age ranges through games. Also, we can look at RJTs of athletics, okay? Meaning that we should create games there that focus on running, focus on jumping, and focus on throwing, okay? So these 7 different things, agility, balance, coordination, and speed, as well as running, jumping, and throwing, are all fundamental movements that we want to enhance with our athletes. And we can do this through games starting at the age of 6. Trainability of flexibility. Okay? Flexibility should really be emphasized at the ages of 9 to 12 in both girls and boys. Okay? And good recommendations would be focusing a lot on static and PNF stretching. Okay? Static stretching would be the simple ones of, let's say, for example, you go and touch your toes and you hold it for a pretty long period of time. Let's just say 30 seconds there. That would be an example of static stretching. Versus PNF stretching would be alternating times where you're going to contract or squeeze your stretched muscle, followed by periods where you're going to relax it. For example here, let's say you're doing a hamstring stretch, touching your toes there, and let's say you squeeze your hamstring muscles for 5 seconds, and then you relax them for 5 seconds. By squeezing for 5 seconds, during the relaxation period for 5 seconds, you should be able to stretch a little bit further. Then you repeat that there. Squeeze your hamstrings for 5 seconds, then relax them. This will allow you to stretch even further there, improving flexibility. So LTAD, again, referring to the long-term athlete development model there. Okay. This reason why this is so important is that it provides each person with the best chance of growing, improving in health there across their lifetime, and helping them engage in activities that will enhance their health. It also, though, can help those that are a little bit more driven and a little bit more talented, helping them to have the best chance to see athletic success at all age levels, from young ages, or even if they get to adulthood and looking at competing in things professionally. So with the LTAD model, there's essentially 7 different phases in this, and they go from younger to older there. And I'll talk about each of these different phases, okay, in the next several slides. First phase is active start. Looking at this at boys and girls between birth to 6 years of age there. And we want to learn the fundamental movements, okay, and link them together through play there. Okay, fundamental movements like sitting, standing, walking, and running. These activities or these fundamental movements should be developed through enjoyable activities, but the activities should be non-structured. So typically before the age of 6 there, putting children in on sports teams and whatnot is probably discouraged there, okay? Because we want to focus on non-structured play there. And that's important because it number one, helps kids at this age there, help them explore their environment. Okay? Number two, just by exploring their environment, they're able to figure out what works better and what doesn't work better subconsciously without actually really even thinking about it much. And that's important from an athletics perspective because we don't want our athletes thinking a lot when they're competing. Okay? We want them to be more reactionary in nature. Okay? And because if we think too much, oftentimes it means we pause. And if we pause, that pause might lead to a difference between winning and losing. So by fostering this development through non-structured play there, uh, these kids at these ages there will learn a lot, okay, without even necessarily even knowing that they're actually learning and improving. Next stage, the fundamental stage, emphasis on fun. Boys 6 to 9 years of age and girls 6 to 8. Again, it stops a little bit earlier because girls in general tend to mature a little bit faster than boys do. As mentioned previously there, okay, we want to develop a range of movements and sports skills, okay, as well as the ABCs of athleticism there. Okay, ABCs, remember, meaning agility, balance, coordination. Okay, some fundamental movements we might want to focus on during the stage there would be things like hopping, skipping, and jumping there. Now, unlike in the earlier stages here, okay, with the active start there, we can start to introduce some more structured sessions there with kids at these ages. But again, probably still focus on a lot of unstructured activity. Learning to train is the next phase there. Boys typically 9 to 14 years of age, girls 8 to 12. Okay? This is a very important period of skill development, meaning if you want to get to be a better basketball player, you probably want your athletes that you're coaching to shoot a lot of shots at these ages there. If you want to focus on kicking a soccer ball, your performance will enhance tremendously in these age ranges there. We also want to enhance athleticism by having kids at these ages participate in a lot of different sports, okay? Typically 3 to 4. So every season there probably should be switching to a new sport, okay? We are also during this learn to train phase, we're taking these fundamental skills that we've developed, things like hopping, skipping, and jumping, shown in this diagram here, and we are applying them to actual skills that we'll see in sports, things like a jump shot or a running long jump there in track and field. So essentially taking fundamental movements and applying them towards a skill. That's what happens in this learn to train phase. Training to train phase, okay, typically this happens in boys 15 to 17, girls 12 to 13. Okay, and this is where we're emphasizing the training portion a lot. Where we're not just going to practice, go to practice. We're going to practice because we want to enhance our strength. We want to enhance our speed so that we're actually putting ourselves in better position to be more successful, actually winning certain things. Okay? So we're strengthening and refining basic skills in the sport being played and acquiring the skills, things like throwing, kicking, whatnot there as well. Due to needing to strength or acquire specific skills and really enhance them there, this might be the time and place where the total number of sports that a kid is participating in might start to decrease. Don't want to really specialize in one sport just yet, but you might go down from 3 to 4 sports to 2 sports just because the increase in demand of having to practice a skill more and more. The training to competition ratio during this phase should still emphasize the training portion, meaning we should practice 60% of the time and compete 40% of the time. However, this is more competition than we saw in the earlier phases that we just talked about. Training to compete, this is where winning becomes a lot more emphasized there. For boys, 16 to 23 plus ages, women 15 to 21 plus ages. This is where we're really focusing on winning. So the tactics of the game are going to be really emphasized. Okay, we're going to talk about the mentality. What are we thinking about? Okay, how do we get in the right mindset to be successful? How do we deal with losses? Okay, how do we mentally deal with that? Okay, as well as the physical preparation. Okay, in the training to compete phase, we're probably focusing on one sport, maybe 2 sports at most. And here you'll see the ratio switches, where we're competing 60% of the time and we're training 40% of the time there. Okay. Here are a couple examples of athletes at the collegiate level. That would say these collegiate athletes would probably fall in the training to compete phase. And then we see the compete to win phase. These we're looking at the highest of the highest level of professional athletes. 19 plus, typically in men ages 19 or older, as well as women 18 and older there. However, certain sports like gymnastics there, they might actually reach this compete to win phase a lot earlier, okay? Because a lot of gymnasts there benefit from being very small. So earlier ages there, okay, they might actually start spending a lot more time competing. So as you see here, training to competition ratios 25 to 75. So a lot more competitions than training. And during this phase here, we are really mastering our particular sport. So we want to really focus on just one sport oftentimes during this phase there if we want to reach the highest levels of success. So we put it all together here, okay? Looking at this performance pyramid here. Starting with our foundation phase, okay? Gradually moving to participation, moving to performance, and then moving to excellence. Another way to view this here is going from young, okay, to a little bit older, to adulthood there, okay. And you can read this chart on your own time, but again, we're seeing a lot of similar trends there, going from younger to older there, okay. From developing the earliest levels of physical competence, okay, to reaching national training squad levels. We're looking at very young ages there, okay, building a base there and having a lot of different people competing there versus very few people competing at the very top level of sports. Okay. Foundation phase, very little coaching there is done, experiencing a lot of growth through play there to highest levels of coaching. So everything is kind of on a continuum there. And then finally, the last stage of the LTAD model, this is going to be people that they're done competing to be successful there. Or I should say, not to be successful, but they've kind of maxed out their training capabilities. They've reached a level where they're not going to be the top in the world at their particular sport. Okay. After this point here, when you're done really competing in sports to become the very best in the world there are kind of two different categories that people might fall in. Number one is participant-based. Okay, in a participant-based active for life phase, you might still be competing, competitive for life, but you might be reaching the masters levels of competition. Like who's the fastest 50-year-old, 60-year-old, 70-year-old, 80-year-old. So you'll probably be competing against other people that are in your same age levels. So you can still compete as you get older and older and older, okay? But you're probably not going to see as many people doing this here. And then you got some other people that are going to want to be focused on being fit for life. So they continue exercising, but they do it more to be healthy throughout their lifespan, not looking to actually compete. Also, during this active for life phase, it should be more leadership based. And we need more leaders here to help the next generation grow and develop. And these leaders here should be knowledgeable about the long-term athlete development model so that our athletes there can become the best they can be as safe as we can. That's all I got. If you have any questions, let me know. Have a good day. Booyah!